Okay, so welcome to the important topic of class. This is a key issue for most socialists, and the main divide in society is that of class. So what is class? Well, really, we're talking about socioeconomic groups that have something in common in terms of income, wealth, status, social position in society. And for socialists, there's the key divide between what would they consider the haves and the have-nots. And remember, socialism, mainly in terms of parties, has its roots in the working class, to improve or ameliorate the circumstances of the working class, or if you're a revolutionary socialist, to transform them, of course. We'll come to that shortly. So the main issue is the divide between the haves and the have-nots. Let's just imagine Karen. Karen is born to a very wealthy family with acres of grounds, many houses. She goes to an excellent private school. She goes to a great university. She has horses. She goes on a gap year to Thailand. And in other words, her life is full of many opportunities. She has wealth. She has her own wealth, her own trust fund, and that gives her terrific independence and terrific power over her own life. She can control her own life. I would imagine Jane. Jane is born in the rough side of Rotherham, not that I've got anything against Rotherham in particular, and Jane, of course, has to go to the local comprehensive school, which is, in Alistair Campbell's words, say, a very bog standard one, with poor education. She has very few opportunities educationally. She comes from very poor housing, there's a lot of damp in the house which gives rise to ill health. Her estate is crime-ridden, and she therefore performs not too well educationally, and therefore, in terms of wealth, she has nothing. In terms of independence, power and opportunity, she has very little compared to, say, Lucky Karen. And so this class system is liable to reproduce itself, and this is an important point for socialists, because what they want to do is to try and redistribute from the haves to the have-nots. Because anything that the haves gain, the have-nots lose out upon. So if you look at wealth distribution, that has moved more towards the haves in the early 21st century, for example. So they see it as a zero-sum game, basically, that zero-sum game, but basically that if the haves gain more, the have-nots lose out. Okay. So really the three key points, I think, to make about class. First of all, we've got the Marxist analysis of class, which is pretty clear-cut. It's all to do with the ownership of the means of production and distribution exchange. Who owns the capital, who owns land? So therefore, if you're the owner, the bourgeoisie, that gives you terrific power. If you're a worker, you're subservient to the owner, and you have to sell your labour to survive. So you're a member of the proletariat. And that big class divide is what moves history, and ultimately will be resolved when the working class appropriate or gain or take over the means of production, either violently through a revolution or peacefully through the ballot box and through, say, state ownership. That divide is what perpetuates history until its resolution for Marx. And the state is an instrument of class oppression. For Marx, the state represents the bourgeoisie and its interests. So see video on Marx for more detail on that. Let's move to social democrats. So the social democrats, as another branch of socialism, believe really in promoting class harmony. And they see the state not as a symbol of oppression, but as something it can ameliorate and improve the conditions for the have-nots of the working class, because they can redistribute income and wealth from the rich to the poor. And so for social democrats, perhaps the main distinction is between manual and non-manual, professional and managerial, often known as white-collar workers, and blue-collar workers, who are, say, labourers or factory workers, the working class. And so there's a more detailed system here, which is this traditional system which goes A, B, C1, C2, D, E, where A is the higher status managerial, such as senior management, barristers, lawyers, doctors. Category B is administrative professional, sort of lower professional, such as social workers perhaps, they're on the list. And you've got clerical workers, you've got skilled manual workers, who are, say, electricians, and semi-skilled stroke unskilled workers, such as labourers. And of course at the bottom you've got your casual workers and the unemployed. This is maybe a little more sophisticated view of class. And so certainly Social Democrats would want to bring these groups together, okay, by redistributing income and wealth. But the third key area of interest that has occurred is really deindustrialization. So through deindustrialization, the working class has shrunk because people who work in steel, iron and steel, coal, shipbuilding, textiles, etc., all of those manufacturing jobs have largely gone. They're certainly reduced in proportion of the population. So the working class has shrunk. And this has given socialist parties a real problem. Who do they appeal to? And so they had to increasingly appeal to the middle classes. The middle classes have grown because you've got information workers, service sector workers. Now these people aren't necessarily well off, and we'll come to that, but we need a different basis of appeal. So the socialist parties have appealed more to the middle class, which we call embourgeoisement, the growth of the middle class, the decline of the working class, and also obviously campaign on green issues and feminist issues. New Labour will be a good example in terms of its attempt to appeal to the middle classes. So some, such as Pierre Bourdieu, the French sociologist, argue that there are really three forms of capital that enable you to be elite or high class, such as Karen, and they are economic capital, social capital, cultural capital. In other words, economic, have you got wealth, you've got income. Social, who do you know to network with, to get on? And thirdly, what culture do you have to enable you to grow and prosper? And this is a new way of classifying different classes. And so we have the precariat at the bottom, often workers in mat jobs that are often very sort of zero-hour contracts, hence the term precariat, and that they have therefore very precarious economic existence, few social contracts and little social capital. But at the other end, of course, we have the elite who have a lot of wealth, but they also have the social contacts and the cultural capital. So perhaps our class system is changing, but still for a socialist, the gap between the top and the bottom, the haves and the have-nots, is just as important as it ever was. Okay, thank you.